Hello and welcome to this review of my Greystone Bigkeys LX. These keyboards are described as simplified learning keyboards and they're marketed towards children so you can get these from schools. In fact, I've had 3 separate batches of these from schools. However, Greystone also mentions they're useful in industrial environments such as goddamn nuclear energy plants. Of all the ones I have, this one is the nicest one. It's virtually unused, pristine clean, and it's their top of the line model, although I do also have the lower sitting plus model. That said, their line is only 2 models big. Although it might not look it, this is a modern keyboard, by the way. You can still get this keyboard from Greystone right now. They start from $160 and you can get them in colored or white only, and in QWERTY or ABC layout, although the ABC layout costs $20 more for some reason. I got a bunch of these from the recycling centre for 50 pence a piece, which is a nice find, but there's no way in hell I'd pay anywhere near remotely $160 for this. I'd rather save 3/4 of the money and then train my kid on a Focus 2001, to be honest. You can have them in USB or PS2, depending on how old your computer is, and they have a rather hollow plastic case. But in all fairness, all the ones I found stood up to the abuse of primary school children, so I'm guessing it's good enough. It also has a metal mounting plate for the switches, which is always nice. It's honestly not built all that badly for a modern keyboard, but for $160 I'd expect a bit more, to be honest. I mean, I know that this is a specialty keyboard, so higher prices are to be expected, but at this level you're getting into Topra price territory, and that's a risky place to be in because Topra do what they do very well. The bottom reveals a few interesting things, including a cutout for a single switch here, which is not there on this particular one, but some others I have do have it. I think it might be a toggle between ABC and QWERTY layout. The model sticker here says that it's made in Taiwan, makes sense considering the switches, and shows the company Greystone Digital from Huntersville, North Carolina, y'all. Apologies for that was my feeble attempt at a southern accent. Let me know in the comments below how shit I did. Standard flip-out feet at the bottom. They look almost exactly the same as the ones on my Dell Bigfoot. And speaking of Bigfoot, for a keyboard that's still being made, let alone one with just 60 keys on it, it's deceptively big, just a hair wider than the Bigfoot, probably making it the biggest 60% keyboard ever made. Although, of course, it doesn't have the famous mastodontic bezel of the Bigfoot. Of course, the reason it's so big is because the keys are much bigger than normal, 1 inch squared, which makes them have almost twice as much area as normal keys, and the legends are also massive. This is useful for small children, of course, because it improves legibility and makes it easier for them to hit it, but it's also useful when you're wearing large working gloves, for example, such as in aforementioned nuclear power plants. They put a matrix layout on it, which means that the keys are not staggered like normal, but it's more like a straight grid. And they went for some rather creative key placement here and there, such as the tab on the Z row and the shift where control goes. The control itself is on this separate bank next to the caps lock key here, by the way, and below that is a diamond nav, which is normally considered extremely old-fashioned. Now, as usual, I put myself through a week of using this, fuck knows why I keep doing this. And when you do use it, you'll find out very quickly this was not intended for fast typing. Although you can get used to a matrix layout, I think the massive key size means that all the keys are much further away from each other than normal. So if you're doing anything but hunting and pecking, you need to stretch your fingers really far and to positions you're not accustomed to. Especially control key shortcuts, many of which are in the lower left corner, such as undo, cut, copy, and paste. But the control key is all the way over here, so it doesn't really reach. Of course, in context, this is a non-issue though, because when you're a kid, or if you're working in nuclear energy plants, that's probably how you type anyway, so I can't really hold the layout against it. The keycaps themselves are thin ABS with pad-printed legends, and like I said, they're obviously a lot bigger than normal. The colossal square enter key in particular is rather quaint, and being 4 inches square, it's almost twice as big as a big-ass enter, which is about 2.1 square inches. It's mammoth. It's so big, in fact, that they put 3 stabilizers on it. 2 perpendicular wire stabilizers and 1 rod stabilizer with a coil spring on it. Fuck me. Now for the switches, they're white simplified Alps. Yes, I finally get to talk about these guys. After Alps stopped making their own so-called complicated line of switches, they contracted Taiwanese manufacturer Forward Electronics to make the switches for them. And these were of a cheaper, more simplified construction. They can be distinguished externally from the different mold marking, but they still have the Alps branding on them though. The main thing that got changed was the switch plate, which on complicated Alps consisted of a pre-packaged sandwich of contacts and spacers with a contact leaf on the front, which is used to push the contacts together through the spacer. Originally they were tall and black, but then they moved on to grey, and for the later generations they used white short switch plates instead. They're all pretty much the same on the inside though, they just differ in colour. This is what they look like on the inside. Behind the contact leaf there's a little movable arm here on this plastic front thing, which presses down on this movable copper leaf fixed to one of the contact legs, which is separated from the other contact leg by this tiny plastic spacer frame here. The sandwich is held together by the contact leaf at the top and by 2 tiny plastic rivets at the bottom, so it's held together pretty tightly and it works great actually. It's quite a reliable system and not prone to faults or chattering. The simplified mechanism is much cheaper and it's just 2 contact legs without the whole sandwich thing, and in fact it's basically the same type of design all Alps clones went for too, only the real deal used the switch plate. This system is much more fragile, less reliable, and a bitch to reassemble, I might add. They use a similar click leaf though, and although the key feels much more clunky, it's still very clicky at least. It's very pingy too, I think it's the springs vibrating. Overall, the sound is nowhere near as good as the real deal, and frankly the huge keycaps don't help the sound here either, to be honest. Interesting is that unlike other brands who will plaster their ads all over with messages saying it's mechanical and stuff like that, the Bigkeys product page doesn't list anything like that. It's not until you find the specs page that it mentions top quality click style key switches, tested to over 10 million keystrokes, which is about half the lifetime of complicated Alps, by the way. Now, like I said, I can't really type on this very well, but for gaming, it's much worse than you can possibly imagine. Normally, I think most keyboards are fine for gaming, with a few exceptions, but this one is flat out unusable. I'll demonstrate by giving a quick demo of one of my favorite games of all time, Doom. Brutal Doom, to be exact. Right, there we go. So, this is the famous E1M1. And I'm not moving. See, holding it down doesn't work. You have to tap it. But even when you tap as quickly as you can, you're barely going anywhere. I mean, look at this. I'm going totally batshit. I'm going totally batshit on this button, and it's not going anywhere. I can barely outrun a turtle. What the fuck is going on here? Look at this! Oh, got up the stairs! Oh. So what happens is they program the keyboard in such a way that all the keys only fire for 8 or 16 milliseconds. Let me show you that. See? Doesn't matter how long I keep keys pressed. It's always just 8 or 16 milliseconds essentially. Sometimes 7. But none of the keys keep depressed, except for the control button that stays down and the shift button, of course. I don't know why they did that, but it was intentional as they do actually advertise this as a feature. Must be something to do with kids or something, and in truth I don't really notice it when you're typing, but for gaming this must be the worst keyboard I've ever used. Anyway, I know I've been a bit mean about this keyboard, but that's not really fair because it wasn't designed for me or for any of the things I've been doing with it. For a kid's keyboard, I guess it's not bad at all, and I can really see how having massive keys in a matrix layout would be really useful if you're wearing a hazmat suit, so it definitely has niche users, no contest. I still think it's rather expensive for what it is, but it is something special, so I can kind of see where they're coming from. Anyway, that's it for this review. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and following is a typing demonstration of me typing on this keyboard.